And what I think is really neat is this idea of spiritualism and having your body as a conduit coincides with my study of past lives and post lives and our current life circulation and our memory. And how does this work, you might ask? Well, good question. I believe that our mind is up here. It's not attached to our body, it's actually all around us. And our brain is the receiver. It's kind of like the radio, and you can tune the dial and receive information from your mind. And as we start out in this life, our brain is developing. And when we're born, our brain is fine-tuning, and we're becoming more and more fine-tuned into what is happening in this world. And we're starting to focus on certain frequencies because those are going to be the frequencies that help us survive with the tools and knowledge and information that we need in this life here. But all of the other information hasn't gone away. We've just turned this dial and quieted those other things. So it's like listening to the radio literally, and you're listening to a channel, and sometimes you bounce back and forth between specific channels, but you're not listening to every single channel because they really aren't relevant to you, at least right now. So my belief is a bit different than those who teach that we have spirit guides that are communicating with us in order to give us the information. I don't necessarily believe in having a middleman between us and the outside or the other side of the veil. And the reason I say this is through all of my experience through mediumship throughout my whole life, because our mind is outside of our body, our mind actually resides on the other side of the veil. Our mind actually is already in the quote unquote spirit world. And so what mediumship is doing is it's tuning our dial in our brain. And by tuning the dial in our brain, when you tune your brain into a frequency on the other side, you're opening a telephone line. You're able to have a two-way conversation from you to whomever it is you want to talk to and back. And there really isn't any middleman. So if we actually take the idea of the telephone, and let's go back to the telephone where we had operators that would patch us through to the other line.
Operator, hold please.
Okay, the reason why I'm talking about this is because our brain and our mind are much more sophisticated than the development of the telephone. And because of the sophistication, we don't need the operator. Creating a telephone line that we are receptive to. And that's what we're going to be working on through this practice, is opening up different telephone lines so we can have messages brought into us, and when we're ready, we'll answer the phone. And when we want messages going out, we can make the phone call. Someone might answer it and someone might not answer it. But at least we have the ability and the opportunity to do that. Now, everyone has this ability. Everyone has the ability to tap into mediumship because that is exactly how we are made. All of our minds, every single person, their mind is outside of their body. Their mind resides on the other side of the veil. Now, when we first learn mediumship, it's going to feel awkward. It's going to feel like learning something new. It's like learning a new skill. You're going to need to practice it, because practice is going to make it more of a learned movement rather than something you're fighting. And the more you practice it, the easier it becomes. Now, it doesn't mean that you just practice it once or twice and then, woohoo, you've got it. And all of a sudden, you're talking to everybody and you're hearing all these messages and it's just really exciting. It feels like Hollywood, and man, you've got too many people trying to talk to you at one time and your mind is just way too crowded and you have to turn it all off. That's not necessarily how it's going to happen. At first, it's like learning anything new. You're going to tumble, you're going to trip, you're going to not be very good at it. And that's okay. That's completely okay. It's just the fact that you're going through the motions, you're learning the steps, and soon you're going to start recognizing these different frequencies. And once you start recognizing these different frequencies, you're going to say, aha, I've got it. But then you need to keep using it. This reminds me of a story about a time when a very good friend of mine took me rock hunting, specifically to go find petrified wood. And he showed me a couple shards of petrified wood and said, we're going to go to the riverbed and we're going to go see if we can find some of these pieces. And I said, okay. So I took a couple of them, I looked them over, and I said, all right, this is what we're looking for. And for the longest time, I would pick up little agates, I would pick up rocks that I thought looked like petrified wood, and he would say, nope, keep going, keep looking, and he would show me the pieces again, and then finally, I found a piece of petrified wood. I was like, oh, thank you. And he said, good job, Maren, let's keep going. So the more I did it, the easier and easier it was for me to pick out these little shards of petrified wood. In the beginning, I would pick up a piece of petrified wood or I'd pick up a piece of agate, but I knew kind of what to look for. And that's very similar to spiritual mediumship and recognizing the senses, the spiritual senses and the spiritual messages coming to us from the other side of the veil, from our mind into our body. I now can go and immediately spot these pieces of petrified wood. And that's what happens when we practice mediumship, when we practice opening up these airways from our mind into our brain. We start recognizing through the spiritual senses these messages that are coming in. So the point of that story was, don't despair. When I talk about conscious communication, it's showing you that our consciousness continues after this life, and it's absolutely astounding. And because it continues after this life, all of that information, all of that knowledge is still there. And so you're still connected and you're still able to communicate because your mind hasn't stopped communicating on the other side of the veil. Your mind is still very active on the other side of the veil. Your brain is only picking up certain frequencies, little bits of information from the other side of the veil that are helping you out here. We're tapping into ourselves. Our mind is out there. And when we're changing that frequency, or we're asking, or we feel like we're talking to ourselves, or we feel like we have these different voices that are guiding us, different messages and stuff from the quote unquote spirit guide, that's actually ourselves. We are looking down kind of through a microscope. So our mind is out here and it's kind of focusing in like it's looking through a microscope, and at the bottom of our microscope is our body. Our body has a little brain in it.
Oh, hi up there, hi!
When someone says to trust in yourself, that's literally what it means. It means you are in very good hands. And you have access to eternal knowledge, and you're not out there alone. That's all a very positive thing, I think. When it comes to mediumship, that is you communicating with your mind. That is your body here, tuning in and communicating with your mind that is on the other side of the veil. Mediumship is you sending and receiving messages to other conscious beings on the other side of the veil. Just as I am talking to you and you are talking to me. All we're doing is we're tuning that radio so we can listen into the conversation. That's all we're doing. We're just tuning the radio and we're going to listen into the conversation. And the conversations, when we get into the different types of mediumship and utilizing our senses, everything from hearing and sight to sound to smell to feelings in general, emotion. And those are the lessons that we'll be stepping into and exploring each one of those different avenues. And as you practice them, you might find that how your receiver works, it works on multiple channels. Maybe it works on one channel with hints of another channel, but we'll see. And it will be fun. It will be fun just to explore around and get to know yourself, and you get to know your spirit, which is going to be magical. And it's a gift. It's going to be such a gift.